I had always thought that solitude was just a synonym for freedom. When Tom was away on business, my world was filled with silence, but this weekend, even silence felt heavy. Our old house, soaked in love and memories veiled in warm light, suddenly reminded me of how easily happiness can be destroyed. I was waiting for Louise, my stepson, who was leaving to study in another city. He had always been the pride of our family, smart, purposeful, with burning eyes full of eagerness to learn. Tom and I dreamed of him becoming a great translator. But this evening, as I soon realized, was to be more than just a farewell. A quiet evening filled with anticipation suddenly turned into a storm. When Louise entered the house, smiling, bag in hand, I felt tenderness permeate the atmosphere. He put his arms around me, and in his embrace I felt warmth and support. As distant as Tom was, there was something special about this moment. I felt safe, as if Louise had replaced someone for me. But with that feeling came anxiety. That spark between us, that unremarkable closeness, I didn't know how to deal with it. Late that night, we decided to have dinner, and just as I put the last dishes on the table, the bell rang. It was Tom. We talked about his work, and I could feel his interest fading. A feeling of discontent fluttered inside as I continued to smile in response to his words. Finally, the conversation ended, and as I disconnected my phone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was out of place. Louise, noticing my confusion, suggested we clear our heads and go out on the terrace. We stepped out, and the fresh evening air embraced us like an unobtrusive hug. I caught waves of his laughter, that young, pure laughter that seemed to turn all the gray of everyday life to dust. We sat for a long time, discussing his plans and dreams, and at one point he touched my hand just, without a backward thought, but that simple gesture changed everything. I caught myself looking at him differently than I had before. Louise wasn't just a stepson, but a young man whose passion for life was contagious. Spontaneously, I suggested we have a glass of wine. We opened a bottle, and soon the conversation became freer and our thoughts bolder. I couldn't help but feel my heart pounding in unison with the nascent tension in the air. The full moon illuminated us, and in that moment it seemed to me that the whole world had disappeared, just him and me. On the terrace, wrapped in a cozy blanket, Louise leaned closer, and a spark flew through the air. Our breaths mingled, our hearts beat faster. I didn't know how it happened, but that moment was deadly. Suddenly tenderness and intrigue filled me, and I felt his lips touch mine. It was a kiss that knew no boundaries or inhibitions. Inside me, everything changed. It was as if reality had flipped. I forgot my fears about Tom, who was so far away. Like an awakening, I realized that in that moment, there was nothing forbidden between us. Louise put his arms around me, and his arms felt so strong, so embracing, that my stomach rumbled with the wild joy that had been searching for an outlet for so long. I just melted into his touch, letting all my doubts fly away like feathers in the wind. We spent that evening as if in a dream, laughter, playfulness, tender glances. Feelings filled our cozy home, filling it with new hues. I wanted this moment to last forever, for Louise to stay here forever, and with every second I realized how much he meant to me. When we got back inside, I couldn't shake the feeling that our lives had changed, that this was the beginning of something new. I remembered waiting just hours ago for my stepson, and now nothing seemed to contain the magic we had created. The two of us, alone, lost in this magical world where anything seemed possible. This weekend, which started out as a goodbye, turned out to be the most exciting moment of my life. I could no longer be afraid. I chose to embrace my emotions and allow myself to be happy. Every moment with Louise became part of a new, beautiful narrative that was to be written together. With every moment I spent with Louise, I realized more and more that the boundaries I'd once created between us were beginning to fade. We were caught up in the magic of that night, and I could feel the tension building, like the anticipation before a loud fireworks display. His proximity, his scent fresh and soft, like a spring breeze, capped me with a wave of tenderness and vulnerability. I knew it was wrong, but how can you resist something that raises the life in you? We walked back into the house, where cozy shadows danced dreamily on the walls as the evening light slowly lit up. Louise sat next to me on the couch, and I felt his warmth fill my inner world. As we talked, I caught every glance he gave me, every spark of understanding in his eyes, and I slowly got used to the fact that I needed to hold him, to feel him, to be near him. I reached up to brush my hair back, but I realized it was just an excuse to touch him. Gently touching his shoulder, I felt his heart beat more often, as if a string was tinkling inside me, creating sounds that only the two of us knew. Louise responded to the gesture by wrapping his arms around me and pulling me closer. "If you knew how proud I am of you," I thought as I looked at him. My inner turmoil was heating up, and soon words were unnecessary. We didn't speak, but the silence filled the room with meaning. I see him slowly lean into me. It was like a slow-motion recording where every movement seemed infinitely full of meaning. I couldn't resist any longer. He touched my lips, and it was the most beautiful kiss I could imagine. Long and sweet, full of promise and hope, he pulled me into a new world where only we existed. That night was our true escape from reality. I was outside of time, outside of expectations, outside of all fears. Just Manala and Louise, joined in sensual harmony. The moment our lips touched, I felt that with every second we were getting closer, not only physically, but emotionally. That kiss opened up something in me that I hadn't even dared to hope to find. I could feel all the worries fleeing away, staying somewhere far outside our little world. The night enveloped us in an embrace, and we continued to open up to each other. His hands slid over my shoulders, and I could hear his light breathing, like a gentle whisper coming from the depths of his heart. I was in awe of what could happen. What started out as a goodbye grew into something deeper than I had ever experienced. Time flew by, and soon we were on the floor, surrounded by soft pillows and plaids that hugged us so cozily. Louise held my hands, his eyes sparkling with happiness and anticipation. These moments were side by side, and we both realized that we had crossed an invisible line beyond which there was no return. Louise, with his complete determination, looked back at me and said quietly, filled with tenderness, "You don't have to be afraid. I'm here, and I want to make you happy." Those words, spoken on the edge of silence, sounded like a magical hymn lifting me above the ground. It was something incredible that awakened passion, lightness, tenderness in me. We continued to talk without words, each glance, each quiet touch raising the level of our understanding. I embraced him, knowing that in this moment we were protected from the world. There was no Tom, no future, no obligations. Just me and Louise in this magical harmony, full of warmth and light. The night froze, and soon I noticed that my mind was beginning to leave me. Being in this state, I realized that our little world could exist only in these hours, in these crazy, exciting, intense moments. I was ready to give myself to this feeling, because there was something forbidden in it, something that could not be desired, but that I missed so much. Somewhere outside our temporary shelter was the noise of life. I didn't care what people would say if they found out. We were fragile in this transitional state, like flowers that blossomed under the light of flesh and passion. And at that moment, the world seemed so simple, with a touch, it could be instantly destroyed or recreated. We spent that night warming each other, enjoying the tenderness and insincerity as if it were our last night on Earth. Every reality has its limits, but in that moment we were invulnerable. I couldn't stop. I wanted to spend time with Louis. I wanted more hours, more evenings, more of every little thing that brought us closer together. Finally, morning broke through the curtains, and the first morning sun enveloped us in its gentle light. I watched him sleep, his face relaxed and calm. My heart clenched with emotion. I knew this moment would stay with me forever. Still, thoughts of the future flashed through my mind, of what was to come. But now, at this early hour, when there was silence all around, I realized that we were just together, and that was enough to open a new chapter in my life. In this moment, I chose not to think about the consequences. The happiness I felt next to Louise was bold, carefree, and real. I knew one thing: to lie next to him was to be part of something beautiful. and that was just the beginning of our story, full of unexpected twists and turns, passion and self-discovery in each other's arms.